there others, genders that needed to be added to the list?
Right, so I'm asking you if we could expect similar legislation if you became Prime Minister as Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, what other genders would you add to the list? My policies on this have been very clear. No men in women's prisons, sports, or bathrooms. And we believe that it's inappropriate for dudes to be in women's prisons, in women's sports, and in women's bathrooms.
Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre speaking to Global News on Thursday, repeating that he is only aware of two genders. This after the new US President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Monday, making it official US government policy to recognize only two sexes, that's male and female. Joining us now is Helen Kennedy, Executive Director at Egale Canada. Helen, thanks for making the time.
Thank you for having me on.
Let me start by asking how the events of this week that's gone by have been from your perspective, working as you do in advocacy for the 2S LGBTQ+ community.
Well, it has been very disturbing and very scary for members of our communities. Trans folk in particular are now being targeted quite publicly by their own governments, and it has been a very, very unsettling week for everybody in the community.
Were you surprised by Mr. Poilievre's comments? What do these comments really tell us about what a Poilievre administration would look like for trans and gender diverse Canadians?
Well, I mean, I'm appalled by his language, and I'm appalled at how he is engaging in these conversations with people. On one hand, it's good to know where he stands, although we've pretty much, as a community, have known all along. But to have him publicly express where he stands and where his government, a potential Conservative government, would stand on these issues gives us some opportunities and some time to try and counter and defend and debunk some of these conversations that are very disturbing.
Could I ask you to explain then, what the practical impact of making two genders determined by biological sex at birth, making that official policy, who is affected most, who is most vulnerable?
Well, mostly the most marginalized people in our communities, and those who identify as trans, gender diverse folk, non-binary folk, and the practical implications are that your own government is trying to deny your right to exist. They're trying to deny you the right to transition to the gender that you actually are and you want to identify as. It potentially will deny you access to public housing. It will deny you access to a passport. It'll deny you access to healthcare. If you do have an X marker on your passport, it's difficult to travel regardless of where you're going, most times with an X on your passport. But when it's very clear that the country that you want to visit is opposed to who you are as a person and actually actively engages in rhetoric and legislative changes that deny you the right to exist, then you really need to be careful and make a decision as to whether or not it's worth it. If you could be denied entry at the border, if you fall ill in while you're there, that's potentially a very difficult position for you to be in. So we need some clarification on the dangers that could be facing and potentially will face trans Canadians who are going into the States.
What can Canadians, allies, even concerned about rolling back of gender-affirming policies do at this stage? What do you think is the personal action really that we can take?
We need to stand side by side with trans people. There aren't enough trans people in Canada to fight this battle on their own. We need to defend against these just ignorant statements that our politicians are making, and we need to litigate. And those are our two options right now. But also, I think that it's incumbent upon allies to get in touch with their members of parliament, their members of provincial parliament, and their city councillors, their school trustees, and voice their concerns about the direction potentially that this country is going. I think it's really important for allies to stand alongside trans folk, gender diverse folk, and take a stand going forward.
That is Helen Kennedy, Executive Director at Egale Canada. Helen, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.